Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today we're here with Nina Dobris from Northwell. Welcome.
Thank you, Larry, for having me.
So you work for a division of Northwell I am unfamiliar with. But before we get into that, how did you get involved working in this community and getting involved with Northwell?
Okay. Well, I am a social worker by trade and have been so for over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've always worked in the specialization of geriatrics.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of fell into it, actually, with one job starting out in a nursing home, then to another nursing home, then to hospital settings, and then eventually landed at Northwell Health. As it turns out, I came in on the ground floor when they had just gotten the green light from Michael Dowling to create a new program that would be a community-based care management program.
And this we're here to talk about today.
Exactly. And so I sat in the very first, grassroots, the sessions on what it would be called and everything. And eventually we decided to call the program Circle of Care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was 16 years ago.
Wow. And Circle of Care, how did they come up with that name? I'm sure it has to do with what you do, but if I asked about this first.
If you think about it, you're trying to make it like a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
It's a circle of caring for those who need care,
Right.
and connecting those who need care to the proper resources for them.
That's what this
So,
is all. Unlocking senior resources is exactly what we try to do, is
yeah,
connect people with resources. When you
exactly.
said Circle of Care, I think that a parent takes care of a child, and then later in life, that parent needs taken care of. That's where my mind went. I'm not sure if that was related.
Yeah. So, it's the circle of life,
Right.
really. But rather than call it circle of life,
Right.
we call it circle of care,
Mm-hmm.
since we are providing the care
Right.
in that circle.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you were on the ground floor.
Absolutely, which was a lot of fun.
So what exactly does Circle of Care do? What
Okay.
service do you provide?
So we are a community-based care management program. So what I basically do is provide service or consider myself to be a surrogate family member to those. They could be younger disabled people or they could be seniors
Mhm.
who live alone in the community and have no local support, pretty much no family support.
Right.
So typically, I would be contacted by the adult children or family members of the identified patient in the community. So I particularly work with seniors and younger people in Queens, Nassau, and Western Suffolk.
Mm.
And I have a counterpart, Eileen Himber, who works with Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan.
Mm.
Okay. So they would find us, and usually what they would be very concerned that their loved one seems to be maybe having cognitive deficits, looking unkempt. The house isn't well. They might have made a visit and noticed a serious decline in their functioning,
Right.
and wanted to have someone in the area to do regular check-ins, to go through the mail, possibly pay bills, um, order food, household supplies, maybe, take care of the medication administration, um, make doctor appointments, find doctors, go with them to the doctor appointments, sit in on the consultation with the physician, and then take the physician's orders to move forward on next steps, relay that information back to the families.
You really are a surrogate family. You really are.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So I will basically do anything and everything that the clients need so that they can remain independent in their own homes as long as possible.
Right.
Now, that can also include linking these clients with community resources such as legal elder law attorneys to set up trusts, and Medicaid, etc., financial planners, people like yourself that need to move on, sell their homes, even people who need to do reverse mortgages. I mean, you name it. Absolutely everything
Huh.
that's anybody needs, I connect them
Right.
to.
You don't have to be an expert in all those things. You have to just know the people who are.
That's right, and that's where, my specialty comes in.
Right.
The benefit, the value is wonderful because the family members would often spend hours and weeks and months trying to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
I have a very, very deep knowledge of, medical services. I am connected to a hospital. I can help them navigate through the medical systems, figure out insurance issues, long-term care insurance issues, you name it. Anything that they need, the families don't know where to begin.
I have a question for you. Uh, as a home buyer, we deal I don't say almost exclusively, but about 80% of our sellers are seniors. And in many cases, they are moving into some type of facility where it's independent living or assisted living or nursing home. And we try to, I found you through networking and so on in the senior community. We try to sort of do a very superficial role of what you do. They need someone to clean out a house. They need someone to move their things to the home and whatnot. We work on like that. They need an attorney. We'll find them an attorney. We know attorneys. You go like 87,000 depths deeper than we go. If we had somebody in that position, could we call upon you, or is it not that simple?
Oh, absolutely. The way that you would just reach out to me, call me on my cell,
Right.
and just lay out the particulars
Right.
of the case,
Right.
and I'd be able to just answer to you,
Right.
whether I could be involved or I would recommend someone else, or just, steps to take.
That's what I love about doing these podcasts, because every time I meet someone and there's some synergy between what you do and we do, it just makes everything better for both of us and the people we serve. So,
Absolutely. So that's why I'm so pleased to be able to be here
yes.
today so that we could really talk about,
Sure.
what we do and how we can help the
Right.
clients that we serve.
Right. It's very interesting. I had no idea. I think Northwell's this big behemoth, and hospitals are not known for being very personal. And no matter how much they try, and my mother just came out of a hospital, and the nurses were wonderful, but it's not the same level of one-on-one attention that you're paying to these people.
Yeah, and you bring up another point that I didn't mention, and that is that I'm also a very, very strong advocate for my clients when they become hospitalized.
That's huge.
It's really huge because, as I mentioned earlier, oftentimes the families live out of town,
Yep.
and their only way to communicate with the doctors and nurses about what's going on with their loved one is by phone. And sometimes that's very challenging. So they contact me, and especially if they're at a Northwell hospital, I have the ability to get in there
Right.
and talk to the people that need to be spoken to,
Right.
make the contacts, get the information that they need, and advocate for the client to make sure that they're getting the care that they need and the aftercare
Right.
that they need. Make sure, and just to be an assistant to those that are working in the hospital, the social workers and case managers, possibly the physicians that need to get some medical history.
Right.
Maybe they might need to find out different different ideas of where the patient should be going afterwards, making choices of rehab facilities that are convenient to those visiting them, making sure that the home is in good condition, that there's food, etc., for them to return to if they're going straight home.
That's important, but I want to go back to something the way this last bit started. It's about being an advocate. I mentioned my mother-in-law was in the hospital she was there for 16 days. My wife and brother-in-law spent 12 hours a day there
Oh.
every day, one or the other, for 16 days, because that's what they felt they needed to do to make sure my mother-in-law had proper advocacy. Now, you're not going to spend 12 hours a day there, but when nobody's there and no one's minding the store, I've seen it because I was there for hours. I'm watching these people and no one's visiting them,
Mhm.
and they get glossed over. It's just the way it is, and, as I say, oil goes to the squeaky wheel, and that's in every aspect of our lives. So you become that squeaky wheel for these people, which becomes necessary. You're the one who gets the attention they need when they're in the hospital, and
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
that's so important. It
Yeah.
improves care to such a degree.
Now, on that note, you remind me of another
Right,
squeaky wheel situation, and that would be when a a client is at home, they're on Medicaid,
right.
and when a person gets on Medicaid, they're forced to join a managed long-term care program.
Mhm.
And basically, even if a client has hours in place prior to enrolling in this new program, they are required to maintain the client at their current hours for 90 days, and then they do a review, and then oftentimes they reduce the
Yeah,
client's hours, and to the detriment of the client that they cannot sustain that lower level of service.
right,
So I have to step in and advocate for them doing appeals.
right.
There's an internal appeal, which normally gets rejected. Then there's an external appeal. And then, if all else fails, a fair hearing with New York State. It's very, very intense,
Right.
involved, requires a lot of paperwork, and a senior, no way, no how, could do that by themselves.
Right. You're using the word senior. I think people, no way, no how can do it, but I don't think you have to
Anyone.
specify with senior in that case.
Yeah. Mm.
It's so funny. The I was a financial advisor for 30 years,
Ah.
and the minimum required distributions, when you set but what used to be when you're 70 and a half, now it's older, you had to take these distributions when you turn 70 and a half, and the rules were so complicated. And I'm thinking, as we get older, and I've become a admitted senior citizen a couple years ago, as you not according to ARP. I've been a senior citizen for a long time. But anyway, the older you get, the less brain matter we have. It's
Mm.
just the way it is. And for the IRS to make such complicated rules at a time when people have less ability to process complication, it just seems so ridiculous. They ended up simplifying the rules. But medical care grows exponentially the older we get. And dealing with doctors and dealing with insurance companies and dealing with care in general becomes so much more complicated at the time we're so much less capable of handling the complication, which makes what you do so timely. What's interesting, when we were talking before the recording, you were saying that you work with people who aren't seniors, which that surprised me. And if you can share an example of that.
Oh, okay. Um, One time I had a client, his name was David, and he lived in Suffolk County, and he was in his early 30s. His parents lived in Illinois,
Wow.
and they found me through a local Suffolk County elder law attorney who recommended that they hire a care manager to oversee his care while, he was living here. Okay. He came to New York to get involved in some sort of educational program and decided that he wanted to stay in New York. So he had an apartment and, was functioning. He had a job. Um, and they wanted me to do regular check-ins every 2 weeks, help him out with as a life coach
Right.
situation. So I would step in when he needed assistance with going to doctor appointments, advocating for him in a doctor's appointment. I would be a buffer between him and his counselors at his clubhouse. I would help him out with, like, just personal life issues, let's say hygiene, caring for your house, shopping, eating correctly, diet,
Mm.
and stuff like that. So I did that for him for several years until his parents decided that they wanted to bring him back to Illinois.
Mhm.
And that was really good working relationship. So that's an example of a person who is not a senior that I can assist.
I have a question about that. This is in your opinion. Was moving him back to Illinois, you may not have an opinion on this, f for to his benefit or to his parents' benefit? Um,
That's a good question. I think it was for both,
right,
really, because he didn't have any real social life here. He wasn't capable of maintaining friendships.
right.
So it, there was nothing really here
Mhm.
to miss.
Okay. Okay.
Aside from his independence, they arranged to have him get his own apartment in Chicago.
Mhm.
And but yet he was still closer to his family, and I think in the end he was very happy to return there.
Okay. Okay. Because sometimes parents do things they think they're doing it for their
Yes,
family,
and
but it's not always for their family. But really, I was curious if because you were supplying a certain level of care to keep him well, functional. You're doing the practical stuff of his life, but there's things we just can't do. I mean, no matter how much time you can spend with this person, he's one client. Um, you can do so much. I mean, you kept him healthy, you kept him uh, functional and everything else, but there's just a little bit more that his parents hopefully could bring to the table. Um, so it's kind of nice that he had his chance to come out, be independent here. So going back, he did what he wanted to do maybe, and now he had a chance to go back and be with his folks. So I think it seems like it could have been a win-win
I
in
think
that case.
so. I think
Yeah.
so. He still lived independently in his
Right.
own apartment. It was a beautiful apartment.
Yeah.
He got a job.
Right.
He was just the only difference was that he was very close to his family and he could see them more
Right.
often.
That's good. Okay.
So
Happy ending.
it was a
Yeah.
happy ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said you do the same for seniors. So how different is it for a
Ah,
senior? I spend a
okay.
lot more of the medical
Woo.
attention.
Well,
But
let me give you an
yeah.
example of one of my earlier clients. Um, who is now deceased, but I received a referral from a social worker that worked in this neighborhood
Mhm.
where he lived. It was just a regular garden apartment kind of neighborhood in Queens. Apparently, what had happened was the neighbors started complaining about the smells coming from the apartment, and perhaps there might have been some, pests
Right.
in there as well. And they were on the verge of evicting him. Someone had gone to the apartment and called 911, sent him to LIJ.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, they contacted me and they said, "Look, you know, we think that this person really needs to have supervision, someone to really step in. He really has nobody to step in and help him out. We've asked him if he would be willing to meet with you and work with you, and he agreed." So, what happened? At the time that I got to him, they had already sent him to an assisted living as a temporary measure.
Right.
So I met him at the facility and we had a conversation. He gave me the keys to his apartment And as you would imagine, it was pretty much in shambles. His problem was that it was lack of mobility, so he couldn't throw the garbage out. It wasn't like an apartment building where you had a compactor
Right.
room.
Right.
You had to take it several blocks away
Right.
to the garbage area.
Right.
So he just had tins of takeout, empty takeout containers strewn about, just stuff. He wasn't a hoarder.
Right.
It was just stuff all over the place
Right.
because he couldn't clean, he
Right.
couldn't do
Right.
anything.
Right.
So I had to, and with his permission, step in. I called a company to come in and to do a major clean out.
Right.
I had people come in and repaint the
Oh, wow.
walls, get him new appliances, new bed, new furniture, new clothes.
Oh, wow. That's
I
surreal.
I mean, absolutely everything from scratch. It was really in very, very bad condition. He did smoke some cigars. There was tar, nicotine, and everything had to be cleaned, redone. And then after the house was in proper living condition, I had him brought back to there. I arranged to have 24-hour home care for him. I got him a computer. I set him up with I took care of all his past due bills. I got him up to speed with all his banking.
Do you physically do that part?
Yes, I did it all.
Yeah.
The banking. He did have a brother that lived in the South, that was minimally involved. And I just took care of absolutely everything you can think of. Ordering food. I came every single week to see him. I was with him when he got sick and had to go to the hospital. When he even had to go to a rehab, I was there to advocate for him. And the aid that I got for him, we became a family.
I was waiting for you to finish. I was going to ask that.
It was
No.
like we were a family. And I still have photograph of the three of us, at home that I can remember him by. He obviously, I'm speaking of him in the past tense.
Right.
He did eventually pass away. But it was such an intense relationship
Right.
where I did everything for him. And he would not have been able to function without me.
And so I have a question. When he came back to his refurbished, his makeover, if you will, apartment, how did he react?
He was blown away. I mean, of course, he wanted to know where's this and where's that,
Okay.
et cetera. And I had to explain, okay, the important things are still here.
Right.
Everything else I had to
Right.
throw out because it was just, in such bad condition. And he accepted that.
Right. Right.
And
Sometimes
then
people
we
have set in
moved
their
on.
ways, and that's why I was curious.
It's true, that is true.
Yeah.
But he was a very easygoing guy.
Right.
And he accepted that it needed to be done.
Right.
And he was very grateful.
Right.
I did everything to try to keep him healthy, got him healthy foods, and try to introduce more healthy things into his diet and set up doctor, you name it.
Right. So how many hours a week were you face to face with him?
Oh, that's a good question. Every client is different.
Right.
This particular client, there was a huge front load,
Right.
of time spent. And then as time went on, as I said, I would visit him once a week, and I was usually there, it's about an hour or so.
That's what I was going to guess.
But, it all depends on what the issues are. So the
Right.
kind of things that I would like to explain is
Yeah.
that some people require weekly visits. Some people I go once every 2 weeks to help out, to do things, to help manage and check in. Some people just keep me on sort of as a consultant. I would come in on an as needed basis.
Right.
I would initiate it, the relationship with them. I would, get documentation for their medical, their pharmacy, their contacts, insurance information, have that on file. And then when they needed me, I can go and step in and help them, let's say if they had a hospitalization or what have you. Then there's also instances where people can use me on just a very short-term basis, project-oriented.
Right. Yes.
So, for example, if they needed help on initiating a long-term care insurance claim, I would go in, I would look over the policy, find out what their benefits are, how to initiate the claim, fill out the paperwork, and submit it for them.
Right.
So I could do that.
I
I
would not
could
have known that you could be called in to do a single line item like that.
see, there you go.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why I'm explaining that to
Yes.
you now.
Yeah.
So the other things I could do is help someone with a Medicaid application.
Right.
So someone needs to initiate
Right.
a Medicaid application, I would help them gather the documentation, make sure that it's in order, submit it to the
Right.
preparation person, attorney,
Right.
whomever is handling the application. Be that buffer to provide additional information on as needed basis. Things like that. If someone needs me to help with, let's say, they get a pooled income trust once they're on Medicaid, make sure that their monthly disbursements are sent off to the trust administrator. Things like that. Sometimes there is a local family
Right.
and they just need me to come in and give them a consultation
Right.
on where to go.
Yep.
Get them going.
Yep.
Sometimes that's enough. So there are many different
Right.
ways of utilizing my services.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
So you've covered a lot of things as far as what you do, what you've done for these two people. And you've just outlined two things I would not have known you do. What other, if we sort of talk like in bullet points, if I was reading a brochure about your program and bullet point, we do this, we do this, we do this, could you sort of rattle off a bunch of line items that people would like to know, which would help people understand?
Well, okay. I'm noticing now that more people need medical advocacy.
Right.
Okay, that assisting with Medicaid applications, directing people on that entire process, which is lengthy and confusing. Okay, I assist. That's very important to people. Doing regular check-ins,
Right.
going with people to doctor appointments, helping with medication administration, organizing that, having pharmacies come in and send in either blister packs or send in medication in different formats.
Right.
I can, things like that seem to be
Right.
the most important things these days.
Right.
In the past, people wanted someone to pay bills and,
Right.
get food. But now with technology, the family members put the bills on auto pay. They, that's fairly simple. They sometimes can order food themselves.
Right.
However, I do have a client that I do, still
Right.
do. I order like food and household supplies.
Right.
I still do that for certain people. So those are really the most important things on a regular basis that people need
Right.
currently. And then the less important things are, well, not so less important, but is getting them to the right specialists
Yeah.
for their needs, like people to sell their homes, people to set up estate planning,
Mhm.
financial advisors, things like that. Maybe a senior center, maybe an adult daycare.
Right.
Setting them up so that their lives, maybe even, for caregiver support groups. And a lot of what I do, Larry, has a strong element of counseling.
Right. That's very interesting. It's not just
It
the practical side of things.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, that's another turn that we can take
Mm.
in this conversation, that counseling is very, very important, because what happens, the senior, we all
Mm.
live our lives independently and are proud of
Yep.
what we can do. Now, all of a sudden, you become disabled, and maybe you start to have some cognitive slippage,
Yep. Yep.
and your loved ones come in, your adult children say, I think maybe you might need some help around the house, and they're vehemently opposed to any strangers coming into the house. Then they fall, then they have to, so it's
Yep.
a battle.
Yep.
It's a battle.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation with your parent without causing grief
Right.
and arguments? I step in and I talk to the families about, who is this for? Is this for you, or is this for them? And I give them a reality
Right.
check
Right.
and explain to them, look, depending on the situation, there's only so much you can do, and you can't force it. And we talk about that piece,
Right.
because there's a lot of guilt involved in the adult child's
Yep.
decision-making process.
Yep.
They get very, very nervous. God forbid something happens to my parent. I'm going to feel guilty. What do I do? And they try to force their parent, who never was a joiner to begin with,
Right.
to go out to a senior center. They never were like that. Leave them alone. If they want to stay home and watch TV, leave them alone. There's only so much you
Mm.
can force
Right.
people to do. So we have to have a conversation, and that adult child needs to understand that maybe what they're doing is for them. You asked me that before.
100%.
It's more for their own sense of
Right. Right.
reassurance and well-being than it is for the loved one.
I spent years, I sold hundreds of long-term care insurance policies back in my earlier career. And I tell everybody, you are not buying the insurance, like life insurance. If I have a life insurance policy on me, I'm not buying it for me. I'm going to be dead by when it pays out. The same thing with long-term care. You're not buying it for you. You're buying it for the person who would be caring for you, whether it's your spouse or your children, because they're the ones who are more likely to hire someone. So if I have a long-term care policy and I become ill and need care, and my wife would want to take care of me, but with a policy, she more likely would tap the policy to have someone else come in and at least help her take care of me. So the policy is for her benefit. And so often we forget what our motivation is, and bringing someone like you in is, while you're helping your client, you're really helping the family almost as much. You're
Oh,
taking
yes.
the load off them. And there's so many seminars and articles and studies done on caregiver health, how
Mhm.
caregiver health deteriorates so much as they go through the process of taking care of a loved one, again, a spouse or a parent. And so you're really helping to create some balance to service both the person you're servicing, the actual senior, or in this case, the 30-year-old David, as well as his parents or the senior's children or spouse. And you have to look at the whole picture, plain and simple. And
Absolutely.
it's and I found so often people weren't getting it. And I'd say, I don't need long-term, a guy would say typically, I don't need long-term care insurance. I'll be fine. But your wife doesn't agree. You may say you're going to be, she's the one taking care of you. Buy it
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah.
Buy it
Yeah.
for her. And
Yeah, sometimes I think the main point that I'm getting from what you're saying is that it's important to reframe
yeah,
the person's way of thinking,
yeah,
okay, to get them to come around.
100%.
Because if you reframe it in the
Yes.
way that it's not for you, it's for her so that she can help you, they may think twice about it.
Right.
And oftentimes the parent who's been very resistant to help, when they hear that they're actually are in essence being a burden, creating more of a burden for the children, which is exactly what they never wanted,
Right.
then they may acquiesce
Right.
and say, okay. And, there's all sorts of negotiation involved in senior care.
Right.
There's different things that you might want to say. Well, if you're gonna stay home and live in this house, then we're gonna need to put in technology for, let's say, cameras or sensors, fall detectors, etc. It's like we need to have a conversation and negotiate, and it's a long series
Right.
of negotiations with setting up care for seniors.
Getting my parents to wear
Oh,
the alert,
the PERS, yeah.
and that was getting them to move to independent living.
Mm,
Was a year of
not
pushing
uncommon.
them to I know it, absolutely not uncommon, and get 'em to wear the medical alert, pendant, a year's worth of work,
Right.
and it's just people want to, they don't, as you said, they don't wanna lose their independence. They don't wanna be babysat, and, you're 90, I'm an adult, but unfortunately, life's a circle, to go back to the name of your program,
Right.
and while you're the caregiver, you become the one needing care at some point. It's just natural.
Yes.
The term I use may not be so socially acceptable. I say diapers to diapers.
Oh,
It's not a
yeah.
socially acceptable term, but I gotta say it's more realistic than not. And I don't mean it literally, but in that a baby who needs care, and then as a senior, you need care, whatever that care may be. And it's just hard to accept, without a doubt. So you at least become an intermediary. So it's not my daughter tending to me, I have you helping me, and you're an unthreatening person to me as a senior because it's not my kid taking care of me. I don't feel I've been reduced. And I think that may be a big issue, but
So
yeah,
yes, and what does happen very frequently is that I'll get a phone call from an adult child and they'll say, I'm having a great deal of difficulty dealing with my mother and getting her to accept care in the home. I have a sibling or two, and we're all trying to figure this out, and we have somewhat different
yeah,
perspectives on what the procedure should be. Okay. Can you come in and mediate
yeah.
a conversation between all of us?
All this
S-
mean the 3 of them,
The,
or the 3 of them and mom?
either or.
Okay.
And I have done that. I
That's
have
interesting.
had instances where I would meet with the adult children,
Yeah,
either in person or FaceTime,
right.
something like that, or Zoom, whatever, and have an open conversation about, what each person's goal is,
Right.
what they want, and try to come to some, common understanding on help. And then I always go, when I do I do an initial evaluation in the client's home. I go to the senior's home
Mhm.
because I need to see
Of course.
their setting.
Yeah.
I need to do like a home safety eval. I will see how they move about in their environment, see if it's clean, if they have food in the refrigerator, if it's old food, if they're unkempt, what their mental status is. I can, do all of that kind of surreptitiously. And hopefully the loved one will be there as well. and to help move the conversation along. And sometimes they get nervous when some stranger comes in.
Sure.
But also the adult child will ask me to come in because they feel that their parent would respect it, as you mentioned earlier, a professional outsider to give the news instead of the child. Even
Right.
though they're adults,
Right.
they're still the child.
Yep.
And there's a dynamic there between parent and child. And sometimes the children, are afraid
Right.
to go up against the parent, even when they know that the parent is not acting in their best interests.
Right.
There's so many different scenarios.
That reminds me of talking about the parent becoming a child in this situation again, is you tell your child to brush his or her teeth.
Mm.
Don't want to brush the teeth. Then they go to school and the teacher says, you have to brush your teeth. They come and says, Mom, I have to brush my teeth. Right? Because an independent person said that. You're the teacher in this. You're the independent person. Your word, what you say makes sense. That's just my daughter. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That's just my mom doesn't know what she's talking about. But you're a professional. You know. Therefore, I believe it. And being independent makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. I had to navigate, again, as a financial advisor, I had to navigate many personalities between the kids dealing with the folks. My average client was 80 years old. So I dealt with a lot of the kids. That's my clients. I had clients who were 95 years old. And so I went through a lot of what you went through in the financial advisory capacity, but also I got very personally involved with my clients. We had the same clients for 30 years. But let's say we grew up together, but it's, and I found it was so interesting, my dynamic with the family, being that independent party. I had so much more clout than the kid. The kids are my age because they're folks of my father's age, and we were business partners. So it was very funny how this 80-year-old would listen to me like what I say is gospel, but the kids don't know what they're talking about. And
Yes, that is exactly right.
and who's more vested, the kids or me? The kids are obviously more vested than I am. I mean, I really care, but I'm not their child. I'm not their adult child. But yeah, so it's what you do is phenomenal, and you do it in such an intense capacity, and you have so many tentacles as to what you do and the resources you can provide, that it seems like an absolutely phenomenal um, opportunity for people, for families to know that their loved ones are being tended to properly without them being involved in their day-to-day activities. And you do things they just don't know how to.
Yes, exactly. So I step in and provide the professional guidance and navigation
Professional is the word. Yeah.
that they really, don't know and would take them forever to figure
Right.
out on their own. And also the reassurance that there is somebody locally in case of an emergency.
Yep.
That's really important. And also to take away the caregiving piece
Yes.
from the family dynamic,
Right.
because the adult child just wants to have a relationship with the parent. They don't want to have to be the one that comes in and does, changes their diaper or has to do little things, because these little things wear the child down. It might cause resentment. It takes away, and then they start building up this, annoyance, and I can see that a lot of times in caregivers, they lose their patience
Right.
with the identified patient.
Right.
And it's not good. It's not a good thing, because, and then when you start to see that, you realize that that person really needs a respite.
Right.
I often see this when it's a spouse,
Right.
two spouses, and the caregiver is the husband. Okay.
That's interesting.
The husband typically tries to act like he's got everything locked down and he's got it together, and even when he doesn't,
Right.
even when he's really struggling to care for his wife, he just says he's got it together, but he really doesn't, and needs help, and
Right.
often refuses help until something really bad happens.
Do you say it doesn't have it together? You talking about emotionally, or it's just not providing the proper care, or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough situation because they're together for so many years, and
Right.
they protect each other.
Right. Correct.
And to the detriment
Absolutely.
of the sick, if you want to call them sick person.
Correct.
Yeah. So many different so many different dynamics and that I've encountered over the 30 years. And that's why I say that so much of what I do is all about emotion. It's all psychological. It's like approaching people, from that perspective. And really, I do have a background in psychotherapy.
Right.
So I have the wherewithal to be able to get people to start thinking in a different way
Right.
and being able to see things differently and maybe try something else whenever possible.
Right. That this is very, very interesting. Again, I do a lot of these podcasts, and sometimes you get a guest that's just more unique. We all deal with seniors in a different capacity, but sometimes a lot of overlap. I know what you do. You're not the only one that does it, as you said. Northwell's not the only one that provides a service, but you're the first one I've spoken to. So to me, the only one.
Thank you.
So the but you always present yourself. We meet at our GPNY meetings and so on,
Yes.
and you're always very professional. And you came across that way today. So, question: my biggest, well, not my biggest question, but an important question is: how are people finding you to know that you
Well,
exist?
that's a good question. So people today, usually use the internet.
Right.
I am a member of a national association. It's called ALCA. That's the acronym. It's Aging Life Care Association,
Right.
located in Tucson, Arizona. And am a member. I am on a website, and people can just enter a zip code for where they live, and then my name and others might pop up.
Right.
So that's one way. They can Google me. They can, Google care managers in the area. And then sometimes they get personal
Right. Of
recommendations
course.
from people who have used my services,
Right.
from elder law attorneys, from doctors,
Right.
just from any other people that I network with
Right.
that come across someone in need.
Right. Because I've spoken to other people that provide care management, but it seems like the person that pays the bills is different. The person does this, different. The person does that, and I could be wrong, but it seems like that's what my experience was in talking to other people. Again, I'll know. The more I'm in this universe, the more I'll learn. But like we all do. But that's so they find you the traditional ways, and the best way, honestly, if they're lucky enough to get a referral, then you
Yeah.
come along.
So the things that, let's say someone will call me and, ask me for some advice about, let's say, for example, for placement in an assisted
Right.
living.
Mhm.
And, I can assist them with that. And it depends on the situation. But if it's pretty straightforward and that's all they want,
Right.
I know that the best way to give them support would be to refer them
Right.
to a senior placement specialist.
Correct.
They know who has availability, which is the best place to send
Yes.
them to.
Yes.
I don't, just because I work for Northwell
Right.
doesn't mean everybody has to stay in the Northwell family or umbrella.
Right.
Um, Whatever someone needs, what is the best thing for them is what I do.
Right.
Okay. At Northwell, I work for the home care network.
Right.
So we have a licensed home care agency. We have 2 certified home health agencies where they get the nursing and the therapies. We also have infusion. We have, so we have a lot of services,
Right.
but we can't service everyone.
Right.
So sometimes when we're unable to service a client, the nurses from the referral center will actually contact me and say, Nina, can you please offer this patient some other alternatives
Okay.
to care?
Right.
So, we're all open to helping
Right.
people, no matter what it is. We did just because Northwell can't do it,
Right.
that doesn't mean we won't find someone who can for you.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So, if there's one takeaway, if someone's going to sit and say, "What's the most important thing about this podcast?" What would the one takeaway be?
I think that what's really important is that people should understand the value of care managers, the fact that we provide such an important service. Uh, it is a private pay
Right.
arrangement,
Mhm.
okay? Um, it People have to understand that it's not covered under insurance, it is private pay, but the value is such that it makes it all worthwhile for the peace of mind to know
Right.
that your loved one is living in the community in the manner that they chose to, healthy and supervised and safe there, and which is paramount in today's world with so many scams
Yes.
going on out there. Seniors are so vulnerable. I just had a client the other day who needed me to, she said, fix her computer.
Uh,
I spent quite a bit of time on there, dealing with the pop-ups and
yeah.
the scary pop-ups that say,
Right.
you're at risk,
Yes. Yeah.
and I had to take care of that for her. They're very, very vulnerable.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to have someone like me locally to help and be available to clients.
Right. Right. Very, very good. I thank you so much for coming today.
Ah.
Very much. So if people want to get hold of you, how do they reach you?
The best way to reach me would be just to call me on my cell, is 516-652-3964, or email me at ndobris, DOBRIS, at northwell.edu.
Well, since there's millions of people going to listen to this podcast, your phone's going to be off the hook. Anyway,
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, but anyway, a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.